Hustle Entrepreneurship Summit. Can we get a round of applause for John Henry joining us from all the way in New York?
You can think of. I did Amway. Have you guys ever heard of Amway? Everyone laughs. I've done Cutco. I sold leather jackets. I did anything that you can think of I was doing. But my first kind of real job was working as a doorman. And here's where I often say that opening up doors for people opened up doors for me. Why? Because I remembered what my parents taught me, that the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And so as a result, I took pride in what I did, and I was the best damn doorman that you could find. I would learn your name, your kids' names, your pets' names. I had everything ready for you by the time you got into the building. You see, because there were doormen that were there for years. They were there for years, and they didn't know any of the residents' names. And I was like, oh my God, the real money here is not the money that we make per hour. The real currency here is the relationships that we're building. That became very clear to me early on. And so first I did that on Wall Street, which was around the world, literally the world's wealthiest people. But I wasn't able to really connect with the wealth there because it was old white money. And it just never really felt attainable to me. And it wasn't until I was asked to do that same thing in a neighborhood called Brooklyn in New York that things really began to kind of fall into place, because the people there were also millionaires, but they were young, they looked like us, they're diverse, and they were making money doing all kinds of really random stuff. For instance, there was a guy who was a professional dating coach. So literally, his job was to teach guys how to pick up girls, and that's how he made his living. There was a guy who was a professional rock climber. There were authors, there were entrepreneurs. It just opened me up to all types of different possibilities. And that's the first time I realized, wow, not only can you make a living doing what you love, but you can make a damn good living doing what you love. So fast forward there, I'm building relationships with the residents. And there was one resident in particular, though. His name was Hugo. And Hugo was a real street dude, real hood. And he's got a crazy story himself. He served some time, and then he came out, and then he understood the value of time. And so he was the first one up and the last one down every single day. And he became a self-made millionaire, and he was not shy about his money either. He walks around with a fitted. He walks around with a $100,000 AP. He drives a Beamer, but he earned it, so fine. But one day he walks up to me, and he says, John, I was behind the desk as a doorman. He said, what do you do with your time? I said, I don't know. Facebook, try to get at girls, like the usual. And he said, why don't I show you the value of time? Okay? So he puts a little assignment on the desk. He says, do this little thing for me. It was like an ad on Craigslist that he wanted me to run. So I did it, and so I started building this relationship. And eventually he says, you seem like a smart kid. Why don't I offer you a business opportunity? Now, his business was he had a chain of dry cleaners. So he said, all right, you bring me clothes, I'll charge you wholesale prices, without you having wholesale volume, and you make the spread. What does that mean? I have a shirt on right now. This shirt would cost in the U.S. maybe $4 to $5 to dry clean. He would charge me $1. So if I convince you to give me your clothes, and I go and I bring it to Hugo, and he cleans it, and then I bring it right back, you charge me, I make the spread, right? Very simple business. And so I started this business. I got cheap business cards, I got cheap flyers, and I had a cheap suit. And I would walk around Harlem, and I would say, hey, my name is John Henry, and I know that you're the key to the building because I'm a doorman too. And at first I was 18 when this was going on, and they were like, I don't know about this kid, but consistency wins everyone over. I found out how they like their coffee. I would show up every single day with their coffee light and sweet. And after a while, they're like, yo, this kid, Johnny, he's pretty consistent. And so whenever the residents would go and complain, oh, my dry cleaner sucks, he'd slip them the business card. And to sweeten the pot, I'd slip them $20 for every customer they got me. Got to incentivize them. And so this is how the business started little by little. Now, I didn't hit the gold until, at this point, like, when you're a doorman, your favorite day of the year is Christmas. Because all the residents, they give you a little bonus. And I was the building's favorite, so I was expected to make $4,000 to $6,000 in that range on Christmas Day. And I was planning to quit my job, and I was going to go and do this business full time. Okay? Now, there was one, I was telling all the residents that I was going to leave. There was one resident in particular. He said, John, what are you leaving for? I said, well, I'm going to go and start like a mobile dry cleaner. He said, you're going to start a what? I said, I'm going to start a mobile dry cleaner. Why? He said, man, I've been in film and television for the past 25 years, and we have yet to find a single dry cleaner that can meet our crazy demands. Because they shoot at 3 in the morning, at 4 in the morning, all these movie productions. He said, what are you doing tonight? Nothing. When I started, I was doing the overnight shift. I worked the graveyard shift from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. By this time, I had been promoted. I was going from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. So I got off at 11 p.m. on the dot. He came, he picked me up, and he took me onto the set of what became my first movie, a movie called The Wolf of Wall Street. And I met Leonardo DiCaprio. I met Martin Scorsese. But more importantly, I met the wardrobe supervisor, the guy in charge of all the clothes. And he's sitting here and he's asking me all these questions, all these industry questions, things that I had no idea about. I was faking it till I made it, and he was smelling right through it. And at the end of the talk, he said, John Henry, you have a business card? Thank God I made those cheap business cards. I handed them over, and they said John Henry Cleaners right on it. And he grabbed it, and at the end I said, look, I don't really know what I'm talking about, but I promise you, I'm going to work harder than anyone you've ever worked with in your life. Time passes. At this point, I had told all my buddies that I was going to clean Leonardo DiCaprio's clothes. And they hadn't called me yet, so my boys are all ragging on me, like, where's Leo now? And to make matters worse, like I was getting ready to embark right after Christmas. Turns out entrepreneurs don't make good employees. I was fired in December 1st. I was right on the finish line. I got fired. Man, I was so down. I really needed that cash. And on top of that, like my parents were counting on me. I had to make something happen. I became a very spiritual man when, as fate would have it, the very next day after being fired, I get a call. This is months later. Hey, John, you still ready to do those clothes for the Wolf of Wall Street? I said, you bet your ass I am. I went. I did a great job with that movie. Afterwards, he said, look, there's a new account in town. If you get them, you're going to be okay for a long time. I'll make the introduction. Boardwalk Empire. After that, Law and Order. After that, Person of Interest, White Collar, Unforgettable, Amazing Spider-Man 2, Ninja Turtles, Spike Lee, Mike Tyson, Jay-Z, the Barclays Center, Alicia Keys. And it was here that I learned my very first business lesson, and that is, there's riches in niches. There's riches in niches. I think the most common pitfall that I see first-time founders make as an entrepreneur and now that I'm investing is that you try to boil the ocean, okay? You try to boil the ocean and you try to be everything to everybody, but then you end up being nothing to anyone. And so if you're presented with a very specific, and I'm talking laser specific, opportunity, I think that it tends to be easier for you because a startup by default is strapped on resources. Okay? You're competing with teams 5 times the size of you. They're smarter than you are. They have better technology than you do. They have more money than you do. The moment you come on their radar, they're going to outspend you. You have no chance. The chance that you have, your weakness is actually your same advantage. You're nimble. You're quick. And so keep your eyes out for these little niches. And the telltale sign of a niche is that individuals know individuals. All the wardrobe supervisors were all hanging out together. Like, yo, yeah, I'm using this kid, John Henry. When he brought me my laundry, he gave me a cookie. Like these random things. You slip into the conversation, though, right? And so, anyhow, at some point I realized, like at this point I dropped out of college my first semester. The scariest thing I ever had to do, to tell my immigrant parents that I'm dropping out of college to clean people's dirty laundry. But it felt right. It felt right, and I said, Mom, if this doesn't work out, I'm going to make it. I promise I'll go back to school, but let me give this a shot. I went and I did it. And then I realized, see, I didn't even know the word entrepreneur before this. Then I realized, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. That's what you call this. Then I started learning business terms, product market fit, accelerate. Then you start learning all the technical stuff, but that stuff comes secondary to your hustle, right? You have to want it so bad first. It's got to emanate from you, every pore of your body. I can smell that. When I sit in front of a real entrepreneur, I can smell it from a mile away. I can tell in the energy. And so then I started learning all the technical stuff, and then I realized, oh, okay, customer service, that matters. I hired some customer care people. Then I realized, oh, okay, branding, I brought in a creative director. And slowly but surely, I feel like I got my MBA on the road. I was learning as I went. We expanded horizontally. We rolled out housekeeping. See, then I put myself in the doorman shoes, and I thought, what were some of the most common problems that people had when I was a doorman? Housekeeping, boom. Dog walking, boom. We became an on-demand service suite. And I would say that the last good move that I made was then bringing on the technology. So you hear a lot of talk about apps. And by the way, don't be fooled like with American media like TechCrunch and Fast Company and all these articles. Like the majority of US companies are garbage too. Right? Like they create these apps that don't solve any real problems for anyone, but they look different. They might have nice design, but they don't have customers. You got to lift the hood. So I'm a little bit more critical now when I see a nicely designed product. I try to lift the hood. Sometimes it's the guy with the clunky website who's got the money, right? So anyway, though, so then we built the technology, and so after about 2 years of running that company, we grew to a size of about 15 people, and eventually one of our larger competitors stepped in and made us an offer to buy the company, to which I agreed, and so December 3rd, 2014, I was fortunate enough to sell that first company of mine. And there was discussions earlier about the right price. Sometimes it's not really about the right price. Sometimes it's more about, I realized and growing companies. And so I sold it at lower than the valuation that I know that I could have gotten, lower than the price, but that built my brand as an entrepreneur, that built my confidence. Now I'm tackling problems that are much bigger. And so that whole time I was growing that company was in Harlem, which is a neighborhood that I've grown in love with. It's where I live, work, and play. And so we created, that same team and I, afterwards we created an incubator called Co-Found Harlem, where the idea is we give companies $50,000 in resources, we give them mentorship, and we give them free office space. And in exchange, we take zero equity. Now, so we give you all this stuff, we don't take a lick from you, and the one commitment that we ask of you, the way you pay us, is you make a commitment to stay in Harlem after the program. That's economic development. That's interesting. It's fascinating. It's an interesting model. Google caught on to it. They came on board, the mayor's office, and so forth. And so we've been able to grow a pretty interesting, that company is a non-for-profit. And then more recently, from that, we realized we had something pretty interesting going on. And so we realized, there were a lot of entrepreneurs that were like, I'm not in it for the money. I'm kind of in it for the money. I like building really cool stuff, but we need to create black wealth in our communities. Oftentimes, and so what fires, you're really in a position to make change when you have some capital behind you. You can make change without it, but it's much easier. That old adage is true. You need money to make money. In many ways, it's true. And so nowadays, I look at the landscape in the U.S. and abroad, and the majority of entrepreneurs are kind of rich white Jewish kids whose parents, and I mean literally, I get pitched on a constant basis. Parents will slip them $100,000, and their kid will go and start a business. And if they succeed, then great, we have a successful entrepreneur in the family. And if not, then hey, I know someone at Goldman Sachs I can call and get you a job, no problem. And yet, so you have this small group of entrepreneurs that does not represent the new majority. They do not look like the upwardly mobile young professionals that are going to dominate the world landscape in a few years' time, which is us here in the room. And so we're really passionate about that. And so we created an investment fund on that premise called Harlem Capital Partners. And the mission is to change the face of entrepreneurship. We want to invest in 1,000 diverse founders over the next 20 years and change the face of entrepreneurship. And so that doesn't just include Harlem. That includes the Caribbean. It's very interesting to me. I've seen some pretty interesting opportunities here and in Aruba and abroad and so forth. And so this is where I'm at now, modern day. So this is what I'm spending the bulk of my time doing, traveling, I speak, I meet different entrepreneurs, I meet with local government, I meet with real estate investors and developers, and we're trying to crack this problem globally, but we can't do it alone. It takes a village to do it. So that's my talk. Thank you, guys.